good. Hey, the clock's actually on time. First. All right. You ready? All right, good evening. Today is July 13th, 2023. It's 7 p.m., which is the date and time for the Mount Lebanon Zoning Hearing Board for appeal number 1856, property owner E.M. Cranberry Corporate Partners. The location of the property 713 to 719 Washington Road, Pittsburgh 15228. We have in our possession the cover sheet, the notice of hearing to property owners and interested parties, and the advertisement in the June 22nd and June 29th edition of the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. A copy of the hearing application itself, including a correction just to make sure that the code is cited correctly. There is a letter from Bally Money, B-A-L-L-Y-M-O-N-E-Y, Real Estate Services. The commercial building permit application. Dated September 21, 2022. A copy of the proposed facade renovation for the property. By registered architect Kevin Turkall, Turkall. Floor plan of the property, elevation map of the property, sections and details of the property, and 3 color photographs of the property. And if we really need to see it, we can look out the window because it's across the street. So that is what we have in our possession. At this time, we'll ask anybody who's going to testify to stand, and you'll be sworn in by the reporter. Thank you. Representing the appellant is Ms. Lori, L-O-R-I, Moran, M-O-R-A-N, and you may now approach and give your request for why we should grant the appeal.
Thank you. Do you mind if I open these blinds? So
Yeah, that's fine.
see?
Yeah.
It is kind of unusual.
No, I understand.
Perfect. We have Thank you for your time tonight. I'm Lori Moran. I'm with Bally Money Real Estate Services. We manage the property. I also am the Director of Operations for E.M. Cranberry Corporate Partners, who is the ownership entity of the property. We've had the property since about 2008. We have been wanting to do renovations there for going on 7 or 8 years, and things keep coming up. We had the water issue with American Water. We had to replace and put the water drainage system in along Central Square, and then we got ready again, and then we had to replace the sidewalk. So we waited for that. We were waiting for the spec for the township because we were going to get grant monies, and that didn't happen, so we replaced it. Then COVID hit. Like, we need to get this thing. Then the township was replacing the sidewalk again.
Can you slow down just a little bit?
Yeah, sorry.
Thank you.
So anyway, so now we are, hopefully there's nothing that's on the horizon to stop us from renovating. What we would like to do, if I can I just explain it simply? Okay. The reason we're here tonight is because of the area from the sign van up. We'd like to paint that because we've been told by 2 car wash companies that they will not touch it. They're afraid the water will go in, the deterioration of the sandstone is such, or the surface is such that they won't touch it. So what we would like to do, I have a sample of not the color, but similar to the pattern and the materials that we'd like to use. Window down, the whole from including turns it down to maybe a pizza. We would have something similar to this, like a black or dark gray. Depends on what you do. But if we can think of it, very similar, almost to the Harry County, which is way different, a little darker, to the black, mix like this, underneath the windows, the whole way up. Change the window to sign it.
Can you stand by the mic just so that everybody,
Oh, I'm sorry.
anybody listening can hear?
Sorry. So we're still working on material, but a lot of it is driven by what do we do up above? But we want to, and then we want a consistent sign criteria the whole way up throughout, because it's really hodgepodge and not consistent right now. So we have to look at that also, but it all starts with, can we freshen up by painting the area from the sign band, the green sign band up to the roof line. We would likely tie in the trim around the roof also to the colors down below. So that's what we would like to do.
Can you go into detail on why you're choosing, because you had mentioned in your letter, just for the record, why you're wanting to paint it as opposed to other options that you have available to you?
Anything other than painting, as far as we've seen, would require lentil or attachment to the material, to the base, which is not, in our opinion, in good enough shape to hold whatever would be on there. Like if we would do porcelain, it would be A, extremely expensive, and B, the concern is that the material that's up there would not hold it properly, would not be safe.
Because you had mentioned another option as well, I believe it was. Sorry. You said the cost to remove the sandstone and replace it with a sub base. Is that what you were referring to?
Like a brick, no, if we were to tear that out and put brick or stone or something else up there, it would not be cost effective. It wouldn't make sense.
It can be done, it's just not cost effective. Is that what I'm?
I don't know that it could be done. We haven't, I don't know the answer to that,
Sure.
frankly, I don't know. If anything can be done.
Going to start with questions.
Sure. So I guess I misunderstood when I was reading this letter. I had thought you were talking only about the sandstone at the bottom, but you're saying all of the sandstone on the facade is deteriorated to the point where you can no longer clean it or care for it.
Right. I would love to just power wash it and see if it cleans up. But I'm told they won't do it, but B, they said they've done this stuff and that will not come off. Especially with chemicals, and the chemicals eat into the sandstone, and that these old sandstone buildings just will not clean up.
I guess one question I have is if it's so deteriorated, is it just going to how are you going to keep it up if you paint it? Isn't that just sort of a Band-Aid? Isn't it going to continue to deteriorate?
I mean, it's not structurally unsound, but to adhere something to it, to hold it, are two different things.
Well, you mentioned before some of the sandstone on the bottom of the building had come off or had been damaged.
We were pulling all of that. That has to all come off, because when they replaced the sidewalk, they broke a lot of the pieces. I mean, Minios went ahead and redid theirs, unbeknownst to me. But it just can't, the underneath is not salvageable.
If you were to paint it, how long would that last? I mean, is it something that, I guess what I'm getting at is the sandstone structurally unsound such that you're going to have to replace it anyway?
It's not structurally sound.
Okay.
The building is sound, it just would not, to adhere like a porcelain onto it would not take. And if we did that anyhow, you're still changing the integrity of the original model of the building. If we cover it up, why not just paint it?
Is the concern with power washing that it's going to destroy the
The
sandstone?
concern for the power washers were was really liability. They were afraid water was gonna get into the building and absorb into, like, it's a lot of pressure going in, get in through the cracks. There's a lot of cracks in the building, in the, in the seams, and that some would chip off and come off while they were doing it, and they didn't want to be responsible for that. And we power wash buildings all the time. I've never had a power washer say, we won't power wash the building. I mean, they would love, he said, I'd love to get this job, but we just won't do it.
Is there a restriction regarding, you're asking permission to paint, but you mentioned that you hadn't picked out a color scheme yet?
We
Is-
have a color scheme, but we're still, I want to revisit it depending on what we do up there.
I have no further questions at this time, but I may after I hear this.
Do you know the age of the building?
I want to say it's the forties or fifties, but I don't know that for a fact. Old Joseph one.
What's the plan? There's the vertical columns that go in between. It's like each of the storefronts that goes all the way up to the top and projects up. What's the plan for those?
Those are a really great architectural, we would try to, make them pop. And that's part of the whole color thing. I'm not sure. Some of those actually are dry bit. That's not all sandstone. Somebody has, at one time, has already replaced the sandstone with, I can see right from here, you probably can't because the truck's in the way, but there's dry bit foam showing in the column between where it says South Hills and Optical. And a few of the columns have, so they're, I mean, they've already been replaced, but we'd like to, somehow enhance the shape. You may already have these. We want to do a black, gray look. But if we can't, black or gray would not go with that sandstone. It would just look really bad with beige. So if we can't do, I didn't know, when we chose the black, gray combo and we did a temporary, we threw that awning up to see what black would look like on the building. We didn't know that you couldn't paint until I was talking to Ross one day, and he's like, you can't paint that. I'm like, so we kind of stopped, but that's what we were gonna do, black, gray, and then the window that's silver right now would be black, so it'd be really sharp. But if we can't do that and we have to leave that brown, then we have to revisit the colors, because the black and the gray would just not go well with that dirty beige. That's what I meant by revisiting the colors.
And then after you paint, what's the time frame of doing the rest of the features, such as kind of having the awnings, the consistent signs, the porcelain on the bottom? What's the time frame?
If we can get started, I'd love to have it done by winter. We would do it all at once. So it would just be a matter of how long it takes to, I already paid 50% down on all the awnings when we were moving forward before I found out we couldn't paint it. So, I mean, it's just a matter of supplies. And a biggie is looking at the sign criteria for the township and seeing what's in the lease agreements and how we can work with the tenants too. Because right now, by right, I can't make them take these signs down. I might come out at night and take Minios down, because it's so bad. But, and I love Minios, they're great, but that awning and sign is like, oh. But, so we have to, I kind of massage through that with the tenants and see how we can help them offset costs to give them incentive to change their signage.
So the entire package, everything kind of is discussed in the letter and here tonight, it's one project. It's not going to be piecemealed over years.
No, the only piecemeal that might happen are the signage, just because we don't control. I mean, if I had a magic wand, I don't like box signs. They're not good. I like individually lighted letters but we don't control that, the tenants do. So we just have to get their consent, and they're all terrific tenants. And I mean, I don't see that it's gonna be a problem, especially if we help them with the signage, but that's the only thing that we don't control. and this, but time-wise, we don't control them, but we will work to have that. And it almost has to be done, especially with Minios. But no, we would do it all.
For other options outside of paint, I know we talked about kind of a brick or a stone. Have you evaluated like a stucco or anything that's kind of not like a stone, but more that you kind of trowel on, that's a little bit different than paint?
No, we didn't because, and we've done drive-in in other areas, but it's just, it's not ideal. I mean, you have a really a surface that would take paint really well. Drive-it typically would do as a decorative feature versus, and it would look about the same as that. Do you know what I mean? It wouldn't. Yeah, it would look about the same as that. And I don't know that it would hold either stuff, although that would hold probably better than porcelain, but I'm not a huge fan of drive-it. It gets wet, you put signage into it, the foam behind it gets wet, it deteriorates. It's just, I mean, I would rather have the natural stone painted than us drive it on top of it. Or not paint it. But it wouldn't, we're not big fans of drive-it.
No further questions.
Thank you. To grant a variance, there's several requirements. First of which is that there's unique physical circumstances with the lot size or shape. Is there anything particularly unique about the lot, the property itself, the land, not the building?
Paragraph will be the physical conditions that peculiar to it, and it would be the physical condition is that it's not able to be properly cleaned and power washed with chemicals and be cleaned to the point where would, I mean, it's like when you paint one wall in your room and you think you don't need the whole house painted, and then you, oh my gosh, these other walls look really bad. So then if we fixed up that whole lower portion, as bad as that looks right now, it would look 20 times worse if we don't do something with it. And we're not gonna do, and we're just not gonna, it doesn't make sense to spend the money for a structural lentil to put the whole linear footage the whole way along there just to put something else on top of it. Doesn't make sense because if the concern is the original stone being modified, we're modifying it by putting something on it anyway. And this costs a fortune. So I'd rather put the money into the rest of it to make it look really good and and that's a background. Because it's so far up, it's not even in most people's eye. I'll tell you something else we're gonna do, which I never knew until I was over here for a meeting last month. Whatever is going on up there with that, I've never seen that metal seam. That's coming off and something's gonna be done there. I just happened to be standing here looking at the window, I'm like, is that our building? It's horrible. So there's brick on the other side that's beautiful, but I don't know what we're gonna do there, but the guys have to get behind there and see what's there, but that's hideous. It's hideous. So that will be taken care of too. I never even noticed it because I'm always on that side of the street. I've never looked up there.
The next point is that there's no possibility that the property can be developed in strict conformity. So you did say that it is possible, it's just cost prohibitive. Is that my
I
understanding?
don't know if it's possible because I don't know if you can structurally, if you can, not structurally, but if you can penetrate into that sandstone without compromising the structural integrity of it. I don't know. I mean, painting it, and not disturbing it is one thing. Driving, nails and screws, whatever they have to do to go through there is a different story.
Mhm.
So the answer is, I don't know. And you need a lentil also, but you need both. You need to be able to adhere to that and a lentil. So I don't know the answer to that. And we didn't get up there and drill and look. Because we just won't do it. It'll stay like that is the bottom line.
Understand. So I'm skipping to the fourth requirement where it says the variance would not alter the essential character of the neighborhood or district in which it's located. So what I think you're saying, and you can correct me, is that you think painting it will keep as much of the original appearance as it is now. Is that what you're, okay?
Exactly. beautiful the way it's done.
Mhm.
But-
All right. So I have no further questions. Mr. Campagnaro, do you have anything else?
And I have to say, if I could, it would be a lot cheaper for us to power wash that. I would love to just power wash that. I mean, if that was, that would be the easiest of all solutions, but we don't want to take that risk. So painting it is the alternative.
Understand. Did you have additional questions?
No, no.
All right, so at this time, we're going to talk to Mr. Sharver, so you can just take a seat and we'll come back to it.
Thank
So, Mr. Sharver, can you present the position of the municipality?
So as the applicant explained, they were looking into basically renovating the facade, but if you take a look at the section under chapter 70 or section 704 of the zoning ordinance, it talks about the design guidelines and standards for buildings and facades. And so the tile that's proposed on the bottom is an allowed material. So it is approved, or it can be approved if it meets the building code as far as the application of it. However, under section 704.5.3, it clearly states that in a CBD district, which this is, no unpainted masonry or brick materials may be painted if originally designed to be unpainted. This shall not include cement block construction. So it's clearly a prohibited application within the CBD district under the design guidelines laid out in the zoning ordinance. Hence, the reason that they're here tonight is basically to apply for a variance from that section.
Understand. Is the current surface considered masonry from a structural point of view, or is it just masonry from an appearance point of view? I guess.
To
I'm
be
asking
honest with you, I don't know
distinguished
what is actually, whether or not, I would assume that that is just a masonry veneer or a stone veneer.
Mhm.
But it could be part of that. Typically, like this building is the same type of material. A lot of it is speed tile underneath, and then they applied that as a veneer. So usually with a veneer, veneers are not structural. But if it is part of the building, it would be structural.
From the definition of masonry here, is that, does it matter? whether
Masonry
it's
is just
structural or not?
a stone or, a mixture of stone and cement material. Like brick, it could be clay, and that's allowed under the permitted uses. If you go to building materials under 704.3.1, it says along street frontage, all exterior building walls and structures shall be constructed with durable materials such as masonry, stone, brick, wood, finishing wood, stucco, or ephes, or glass. Ephes is just exterior insulation finish system. It's the new form of stucco, where they just put a foam and then they coat it with an exterior, sort of thick coating or a thick paint. It's sort of like a cement texture, but a lot of it is just, I believe it's a latex makeup. Whereas the real stucco is actually a cement that they actually trowel onto the wall. That's the difference between stucco and ephes.
Mr. Campagnaro, do you have questions?
Does the city have any view, does the municipality have any view?
Other than
position?
what our ordinance states.
Okay, no further questions.
Mr. Rothman?
No questions.
I guess, do we know why this was passed? Is this a common type variance, or is it, it's just been there forever and nobody really knows why, or?
The section of the ordinance?
Yes,
It's been there as long as I've been here.
sure.
I've heard of other people trying to, not, or I should say, try to paint the variant or get a variance to, but I am unclear of whether or not anybody has been successful in that,
Thank you.
in
So,
my history here.
and I know that the municipality has, like Mr. Melryan, works with the, property owners to enhance the district. Any feedback from his department?
No.
Anything? Okay. And is there any, like, given the age of the building, like historical significance? I do see some.
It would be in the historical district. I don't know if they're aware of what is being proposed.
Mhm.
I don't know if the applicant mentioned anything to them or not.
And when I know, my understanding is the district only identifies the property, but places no restrictions on what the.
Correct.
owner
There
can
is
do. Right.
no guidelines for that.
All right. Any other questions?
No question.
Any other questions?
No question.
Yeah, please come forward.
Painting natural stone, for brick especially, we go out of our way. What we've done for 32 years is buy distressed properties and renovate them. And I will do everything in my power never to paint natural stone, whether it's brick, whether it's whatever it is, unless you have to. And we've gone to great lengths and to not do that because it does change. A, maintenance is really expensive, and B, it does change the natural significance. We have the Trader Joe's building over in East Liberty, the old post office. And we put an addition on. A lot of people say, why don't you just paint the whole thing? We brought a mason in to match the brickwork, to do the pattern, the whole thing, in order to maintain the integrity. But the brick was in really good condition, so we could do that. So if we can, we always we don't paint, and I cringe when I see people paint, especially brick, red brick in the paint. It looks really pretty white, but you can never take it back. You can never undo it, except for a ton of money to power wash off. So I think it's a good variance to have, but I just think that there are exceptions to every rule, and this is one of them. So I will support that variance for what it's worth.
I do see some architectural designs, a little, I don't know what you call it, the little tops.
Yeah, we love that. We're not gonna, if anything, we can look to enhance it, as long as it's not tacky, and there might be ways that we can enhance that.
Okay.
And that's part of what we'll look into, because those are really cool. The pillars are really cool. And so we would look to definitely keep those and see from the architect standpoint how we can, do we want to make them pop or not? Are they subtle now? But we'll look at that, but we're definitely never gonna touch those.
Yeah.
Because those are really beautiful. Quite a bit.
Mr. Sherver, anyone online? This time we will go into executive session and we will be back. Mhm. You ready? We're back on the record for appeal number 1856. When we discussed it, we just wanted several restrictions that we just wanted to make sure you're okay with before we vote. One is just that any painted area would be as close to the existing color as possible, just with that sandstone color. We think that will help, maintain the appearance of the building in the spirit of which the ordinance itself, the 704 ordinance is passed. So no zebra stripes or things like that. It's be kind of a protective coat of paint as opposed to a decorative coat of paint, if that makes sense. Sure, yeah, it can be a color, it can be a tint, just the tint should be as close to the existing sandstone color as possible. So we're not doing red, blue, green, right? I think we decided not, what's that? Go ahead.
Like as long as I think if it has great pigment, it could be close to what's out there now. It's not, we're trying to, the intent is to, as Mr. Clark said, is to like prevent a kind of radical color and maintain kind of the original look of the building and the intent of that, keeping not painting masonry is to maintain that look.
So that's one. And then the second, and you already touched on this, was just for the architectural detail that is existing, that we'll try to maintain that as closely as possible. I know it will now have a coat of paint on it in theory, but to try to not destroy as much as you can when you're doing it. And again, I think that's just consistent with the, keeping the rule here, but also helping protect the property, just to try to maintain that. So are those, all right, very good, thank you. So with that, we will now vote. Mr. Campanero, how do you vote? I'm sorry, Mr. Scowen. Did I do that already?
It's okay.
My apologies,
I-
Mr. Scowen.
I vote to approve the variance.
Mr. Rother,
Yeah, I vote to approve as conditioned.
and I also vote to approve this condition. So we'll prepare the paperwork and you will hear from the zoning office in the future. With that, we're off the record. All right, thank you. Did I see? I said. And I did earlier, and I think I did, because Andrew sometimes is sitting there, and for some reason, I looked over and I said, "That's Andrew," so my apologies.
Take care.